Good morning everyone, and how are you? Welcome back to the channel. Now in this video we're going to talk about where to start in a van build and the thought processes involved in getting your van up and running. Now here we go.
Hello world, wake me up to another good morning, time to go. Oh, we are all looking for adventure. 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 We are all looking for adventure.
Now you're probably like I was a few years ago. You've got this empty van, you want to convert it into an RV stroke camper stroke motorhome, whatever you want to call it, and you have literally no idea where to start. Now the first place that you need to start is you need to have a plan. You need to have some idea of how you're going to lay your van out. Now the way that I did this was that I previously had a Volkswagen Transporter. It was laid out in a certain way, basically with a north-south bed, had a small kitchen area, and it had a decent sized fridge. So in that van, one of the priorities was a decent sized fridge plus a nice bed. So when I moved to the Volkswagen Crafter, I basically wanted that similar sort of layout on a bigger scale. So basically have an idea of your layout, and the place to go for that is obviously YouTube, and the people that I looked at were the indie projects and Kite Van Man, and my van layout is very similar to theirs. So that is probably the first thing that you need to do. Now the next thing that I think that you need to do is basically have a priority. Have your priorities. Now you need to think about what you need, what you can't live with, and then what you can do without. Now from my point of view, I wanted the van to be basically open plan. I wanted it to be bright and airy, but in addition to that, I also wanted I didn't want a fixed shower. However, I wanted the facility to have a shower inside if the weather required me to do so. And I'll just leave a link to the way that I've achieved that in the description, and also here is a cue. Also, I wanted a basically a proper mattress on the bed. I needed a really comfortable bed. The next thing I wanted was a lounge area, basically big enough for two people to sit on or lounge on, especially on a wet, rainy day. There's nothing worse than being stuck inside somewhere and you don't have somewhere to sit. Now in this next step, we're going to be talking about two things. Now firstly, and probably most importantly, is your budget. Now you have to decide how much money you have, how much money you're going to spend, and this is firstly going to affect what you can have in your van, you know, your wants and the things you can live without. And secondly, it's going to affect things like the installation. Now if you've got a big budget and you can afford to pay someone to fit your van out, then all well and good. However, like me, I didn't have a huge budget. And secondly, your skill level, what you can do yourself, what you're capable of doing. Now if you're like me and you have absolutely no carpentry skills whatsoever, I'm dangerous with a screwdriver, and I have no carpentry skills whatsoever. So the track that I went down was flat pack. So basically brought a flat pack kitchen from Bunnings Warehouse, and the lounge is made out of flat pack wall cabinets from Bunnings Warehouse. And doing it this way is very quick, it's very simple, and you've got basically cabinets in a box ready to go. Now for this next step, one of the biggest things that you really need to do is not to get overwhelmed. Now if you look at the job in a whole, it's quite a big job, it's a huge job, and especially if you're starting with an empty van, it can be really overwhelming. Now what I would say is don't get overwhelmed by it all, just stick to one job, move on to the next. Electrics and the water are probably the most complicated part of it, and these are things that you really don't need to think about until further on down the track. For me, the priority was to get my van habitable as quickly as possible. Things like electrics, although they seem a necessity, they're not really a necessity. I basically used battery powered LED downlighters, and I used them for a long time. There was no mains, there was no 12-volt power. They were just AA batteries, and with the fridge, I had the fridge, but I just placed the car battery next to the fridge and just charged it up when needed. So don't get overwhelmed by these things. The water and the power for me were last on the list of things to think about, and they were the most complicated. Okay, so we've got a plan, we've worked out how much we want to spend, we've worked out whether we can do it ourselves or whether we're going to get someone to do it for us. Now we're coming to the pointy end of the stick and the stages that I went through to actually fit the van out. Now a couple of these stages I've added because, like everything, once you've done it once, you know the things that you've done wrong. So I'm just going to run through the stages now. Now stage one of the build was the noise deadening, and for this I used a product called Rattle Trap, which I purchased off eBay, primarily because of all the YouTube channels, or majority of them that I saw, they pretty much use Rattle Trap, and it comes in a roll. Now you don't need to use, I've seen people that cover whole panels of their van with this stuff, Rattle Trap. You don't need to. All you need to do is just cover a small area of each panel. I'm not sure the percentage, but I think it's like 10 or 20%. And basically all it does is it just changes the dynamics of the panel with regards to vibration, and basically just reduces vibration that way. And it's commonly used in the automotive industry pretty much everywhere. Stage two in the build was the insulation. Now again, on YouTube I saw so many different types of insulation that could be used. Lots look very complicated, as in spraying foam and all this sort of stuff. In the end I just went for earth wall insulation available from Bunnings, and I just put straps up, kind of straps made of string, just to keep the insulation up vertical prior to the lining. Now the next stage after the insulation is lining. Now again, I saw on YouTube loads of different ways to line the van. One of the ways that I did see was using old pallet wood. Now firstly I thought, yeah, they do look nice. Secondly, I did think it's a hell of a lot of work. And thirdly, I thought to myself, yes, it's a hell of a lot of weight. Now, weight is obviously a big thing because your van can only weigh a certain amount. So in the end, a friend then mentioned to me a product from Laminex called Aquapanel. Now, Aquapanel is used in showers. It comes in different colors, so obviously I wanted white. It's very flexible and it is very light. Yes, it's not the cheapest, But I think that being said, once I'd got the MDF, I then sealed it and undercoated it and then put the top coat on. The aqua panel probably didn't work out that much more expensive. Now let's move on to the next stage, which is ventilation. Now this is actually something that's very important. Now I didn't do this until the very end of my build probably, and I wish I'd done it at the beginning. Now, so ventilation, I have two max air fans. One is over the bed and one is basically at the front of the van. Now the one at the front of the van, this is on a Volkswagen Crafter. The van actually has the markings out for a roof vent, so it's pretty easy to sight it there. But this is something that you need to, I think is very important and needs to be done at the beginning. I didn't cut the holes myself. Again, there are YouTube channels and such like for putting max air fans in. If you're technically aware and you can do it yourself, that's great. I wasn't, and I got someone to do it for me. So the next stage for me was the floor. Again, the floor, as kind of insulation, I just used the blue paper silver wrap, or whatever you want to call it, again from Bunnings. And I used 16mm marine ply, again from Bunnings warehouse. And what I did was I screwed the floor straight to the ribs of the van. I've seen people that do put platforms down, and I didn't see the need for it. I just screwed the ply straight to the ribs of the floor, and well, I'm happy with it. There have been no dramas with it whatsoever. Next came the bed, and again the bed, I kept it very simple. I think you can see the trend here. The moral of the story is keep it simple. Now the bed is basically two rectangles. They're the verticals, so they're basically what you would call the base of the bed. At the height, now the height I chose of the bed was so that I could get my folding chairs, my reclining chairs under it that would fit under it. So the two rectangles are the verticals. They then have three horizontals, and on top of that is again 16mm, I think it was structural pine on this occasion, placed on top of those horizontals, and the mattress then sits on top of that. Easy. So we've got the floor in, we've got the bed in. Next came the kitchen and the lounge. Like I said, these were flat packs from Bunnings warehouse. Everything was kind of there ready to go. It just took me probably a couple of hours to sort the flat packs out. And the kitchen top again was from Bunnings. It's just a laminate pine kitchen top. I think it was $100. And the sink I got off eBay. So now we're getting on to the pointy head stuff, the technical stages. So then there was the power and the solar panel, and I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of it. Suffice to say that I do have a video on my power setup, which I will link to, and you should get a prompt for it. But the power, now basically, again on YouTube, you see a lot of people running their cables at the very beginning. Now, if you're not that way inclined and not that technical when it comes to power, you will look at it and think, well, how am I going to run those cables? So basically, because I'd used the flat packs, the curve of the van leaves a gap behind the flat packs. I knew where I needed my battery, and I knew where my fridge was. I then used a shop called J-Car for advising me on the size of cables and the thickness and the fuses and such like. And then all I did was just run the cables behind the flat pack. And I got some conduit under the bed and just ran the cables for the power through the conduit under the bed to keep it all, I won't say neat and tidy, but to keep it all hidden. And then that was it. The power was in, and it was quite easy, really. Now, really, the final stage for me was the water and the plumbing. I decided not to go for the big undervan fixed water tank. Firstly, I didn't want to cut holes in the van. I wanted it to stay stealthy. And secondly, I wanted it to be easy to fill up. Now, in Australia, especially in a drought, it is very hard to pull up anywhere and fill your van up with 100 litres of water from a hose pipe. So basically what I decided to do was to have a small fixed water tank and then have portable containers that I could fill up, that I could then pump into that fixed water tank. Now that concludes this video, guys, in the 4 steps to getting started to converting your van. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please subscribe and please comment below. Now I'll just take this one last thought with you. If you don't get it right the first time, don't worry, because you are always going to be improving on your van. There's always something that you'll want to change, and you'll only know that once you start living in it. So once again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again in the next video.